All right, let's talk about the Tennessee Titans, who had a draft that, to be honest, was not my favorite draft. I think it's an interesting draft. I think they got some good players though, and there's actually some picks I really liked about this draft. But it all started with number 7, which this is just again, it's a philosophy thing. Some people like doing this, some people don't like doing this. I've never been a big draft for need fan. I think that getting Joe Alt at 7 would have been ideal. Joe Alt getting taken by the Chargers at 5, I think, was a bummer for Titans fans, who then, in my opinion, reach on J.C. Latham. So you see the chart next to me. What you're looking at is a number all the way to the left is one that player was drafted. The next number over is one they were projected to be drafted. Using the consensus big board, and then you have the player name and the position. For Latham, I'll say this. I like Latham a lot, and I think that he's someone who is a first-round talent. I don't think this is a Cleveland Ferrell situation where the Raiders just were crazy there and ended up not even getting a good player. I think the Titans got a good player. I just feel like for the 7th overall pick, they could have maybe gotten a better player. I do think Latham will probably be a pretty good tackle for them and has the projections to be worth a number 7 overall pick. I'm not saying it's out of the question that he could end up being the 7th best player taken in this draft class. It's just, I think there were better prospects, more complete prospects. There is definitely some projection when it comes to Latham, and I think there are things he's going to have to improve. I made a whole film study on him. That was one of my night of film studies. So it's such an important need. They needed to get a tackle. I get it. It's just, I would have rather them, once Alt was off the board, I think they probably could have traded down at that point. I think there would have been teams willing to try and trade up to get a quarterback. Maybe not. Maybe you couldn't do it and couldn't get good value for it. But then I would have rather just gone with like Odunze or something. That's just what I would have done. So again, not necessarily saying it's the wrong decision, just a decision I would not have made personally. Then you have Tavondre Sweat, the interior defensive lineman, who, listen, he's this huge guy, right? I mean, physically, I remember putting in my notes that he looks like Andy Reid in the punt, pass, and kick competition with, like, he's just, like, that much bigger than everybody else around him. So, like, okay, that's cool. Good run-stuffing interior defensive lineman. Some people had him as a top 50 prospect. I did not, but I did consider it. I think 73 on the consensus big board is a bit unfair for someone like Sweat. So it is a reach, but the reason why he's fallen so much is I think there's a lot of character issues with him that people have talked about, which is, I think, concerning. And I also think there's just tape issues of how much are you getting out of him. But if he can be a really good 300, 400 snap guy next to Simmons, like, I don't know, I'm not going to sit here and say there's no value in that. Like, there's absolutely value in that. Then you have Cedric Gray, a linebacker who is, an undersized linebacker and also someone who occasionally will overcommit on these plays. So I wasn't like a huge fan of him as a prospect, but at pick 106, I actually really like this pick. I think that, like, I don't know what his ceiling is, but feels like he should be able to come in and be a contributor if nothing else. Maybe he's just a depth piece who comes in and, again, plays 300, 400 snaps, but, like, there's value in that. So for pick 106, I think this is where we see the draft turn a little bit and start to get on the better side. At least if these next couple picks, I think we're, this one in general, I think I'm a big fan of. And again, the last 2 picks, even if I thought were reaches, were still good players. Jarvis Brownlee Jr. is another interesting player. So he is a corner out of Louisville who, is it a guy who is, someone who, the concern with him is, does he have the speed to really work as an outside corner? And I do wonder with the Titans, is maybe the hope here, he could be a depth piece, but not on the outside in like these one-on-one situations, but more so, if you're running, 2 safety deep coverages, which the Titans do like to do typically, that's something I could see happening. It's kind of how their scheme is built. They put so much emphasis into the secondary. That's something they really value, and it's smart. I mean, that's part of why the Titans are successful, is because of how much emphasis they put into the secondary. So this is another, I would say, solid pick here. Just getting these players who are, positions that can help you and getting depth there, and just again, being on the right side of the consensus big board on these couple of picks, right? A couple guys that were supposed to go earlier than you ended up getting. That's good. And hey, I know people like to think that the draft ends after round 2, but these picks really do matter. And hitting on these picks, like the Rams won a Super Bowl by trading away their first round picks for stars and then nailing all of these late picks. It really does matter. Final few picks are, a couple interesting picks as well here. So first you have Jaquan Jackson, a wide receiver here who, wide receiver out of Tulane. And he's someone who is, the metrics aren't going to wow you. A 5'9" guy, runs a 4.4, which is good. But as a whole, the athleticism isn't like otherworldly, especially for someone who is on the shorter side, where usually you hope you get a little bit more speed and a little bit more shiftiness there. Well, why do you, what's the benefit with him? I think a big part of why you're drafting him is he can do several different things. He can, he is someone who can be a runner. He can, he can take be a halfback. He can be a punt returner. So might be a special teams asset here and a receiver. So you get those 3 options. I think that helps because if he is a returner, okay, you have someone on special teams who can be and that's a key special teams role on top of it, and someone who can play wide receiver or halfback. So if you get injuries there, he can now, be a player, be a depth piece in multiple different places. A lot of times, guys who get drafted here, you're more likely to get drafted if you play multiple positions, right? Because then it saves you a roster spot. You don't have to get a backup halfback and receiver. You can just have, Jaquan Jackson be that guy. So I'm assuming that's what they're doing there. Then a couple of very late picks, towards the end of the draft. James Williams, a safety who, reading up about him, definitely a guy who has really good, the athleticism is really promising. Now, he's not the, superstar athlete if you just look at the, the combine numbers. But what you have to remember is he's doing it at 6'4". So when you're a 6'4" guy who's running a 4.6, that's a lot better than if you're a 6 feet tall guy running a 4.6. So that's exciting. It seems like he's a very spotty player and very inconsistent player for Miami playing safety. But when you have a guy who just has the physical traits that he has, maybe get him in the NFL locker room, you hope you can put it all together. Finally, Jalen Harrell, the edge rusher, who, you look at the metrics and you look at the advanced analytics, and you can see why he's going just a few spots before Mr. Irrelevant is. But I think he's another guy where he's maybe more of a... in fact, I've read people saying maybe he is someone that you try as an off-ball linebacker, which is interesting. He was projected to go a lot higher for what it's worth. He was projected to go 199, goes here at 252. So seems like a guy who has interesting athletic traits. A bit smaller, he's 6'4", 240, so a bit skinnier than your average edge rusher. But you do wonder, what's his role? But for pick 252, I kind of like taking a flyer on just a good athlete and see if you can figure out how to have him play football later. Not the worst thing in the world. So yeah, those are my thoughts on the Titans draft. What did you think about it? Let me know in the comments below. Always love hearing from you. And of course, as always, thanks for watching.